Hi everyone. Today I will be exploring cohort studies, a cornerstone of epidemiology. Imagine following a group of people over years just to see how their habits affect their health. Essentially, these studies track groups of people over time to see how exposures like smoking, diet, or exercise affect the development of diseases. Cohort studies can be prospective, where we follow participants into the future, or retrospective, where we look back at historical records to see what happened. These studies often collect primary data directly from participants, giving researchers detailed and reliable information. Cohort studies have an interesting history. Think back to the 1850s when John Snow investigated cholera outbreaks in London. While not a cohort study in the modern sense, it laid the groundwork for following populations to understand disease causes. Over time, cohort studies became more structured, allowing researchers to track large groups systematically and uncover links between exposures and diseases, like the famous Framingham Heart Study, which transformed how we understand cardiovascular risk. There are two main types of cohort studies. Prospective studies recruit participants and follow them over time. Imagine tracking a group of smokers and non-smokers for 10 years to see who develops lung disease. Retrospective studies, on the other hand, look back at data that already exists, like medical records or employment histories, to find patterns. Prospective studies are generally stronger because they track events as they happen, but retrospective studies are faster and less expensive. Cohort studies rely on good data. Primary data is information we collect directly from participants through interviews, lab tests, or physical exams, and it is often the most reliable. One of the cool things about cohort studies is that they allow researchers to study several outcomes at once. For instance, a study on diet could examine the risk of diabetes, heart disease, and even certain cancers in the same group. Imagine learning all of that from just one group of people. It is a powerful way to understand health. Cohort studies have some major strengths. First, they allow us to calculate incidence rates, showing how likely people are to develop a disease over time. Because we observe participants over time, we can also establish cause and effect relationships. Another strength is their ability to study rare exposures. For example, if only a small group of people is exposed to a new chemical at work, a cohort study can still track how it affects them. And because multiple outcomes can be studied, one cohort can answer several research questions. Of course, cohort studies are not perfect. They can take years or even decades to complete, which makes them very expensive and time-consuming. Collecting and managing data from large groups is complicated, and some participants may drop out over time, potentially biasing results. Sometimes exposure information is hard to get, especially for retrospective studies. Despite these challenges, when done carefully, cohort studies provide some of the most reliable evidence for understanding how exposures affect health. They, of course, include investing years of effort, but gaining insight that can change public health forever.